Generals Die in Bed. Chapter 6. Bombardment. Part 3. The explosions die down. We decide to move. I motion to them that we are to go forward. We crawl out of the dugout. We support Carl's brother, one on each side of him. There is no shell fire here. To the rear they are shelling our artillery batteries, but here there is only a steady sweep of machine gun fire. As we are in the discarded trench, we are in no danger. At last we reach the sap that leads to our trenches. The sentry challenges us, and we are allowed to pass. Clark is waiting, checking off the names of those who return. He looks with approval at the 2 prisoners. I am ordered to take the prisoners down to battalion headquarters. In the headquarters dugout there are about 50 men congregated. I am greeted with shouts of approval by the officers. It seems that mine are the only prisoners brought in. The colonel slaps me on the back. I ask that the prisoners be treated nicely. Of course, says the colonel in a gruff voice. They are taken into a corner and given some food and rum, to warm them up and make them talk. One of the men in our company comes up to me and whispers, "They're talking of giving you an MM." I watch the noisy scene quite calmly. The officers and men are flushed with the freely flowing rum. The colonel honors me by calling me to his table and offering me his bottle of whiskey. I take a drink. I am amazed that I do not tremble and shake after the experiences of the night. They are talking of the casualties of the raid. McLeod was killed by a grenade as we leaped into the trenches. 40 men are missing out of the 100 who went over. And over there? One of the captains in another company takes the little red and black striped fatigue cap from the head of the wounded prisoner and gives it to me. I refuse to take it. "Here," he shouts boisterously. "Here, take it and send it home to your mother as a souvenir." He stuffs the cap into my pocket. Outside, an occasional shell screams over our heads and explodes, shaking the dugout. The terrific noise is gone. The raid is over. 40 men, a young officer, 2 prisoners, and Carl. I think about this calmly, but sadly. The raiders are excused from duty for the remainder of the term in the line. We are sent back to the reserve dugouts. They are spacious. The effect of the rum begins to wear off. I try to sleep. I cannot. I am proud of myself. I have been tested and found not wanting. I lie on my blanket and think of the raid. I feel quietly sure of myself. I went through all that without breaking down. I feel colder now that the rum no longer acts. I begin to shiver. I draw my greatcoat over my head. I begin to shake. Cold, I say to myself. Cold. My hands shake, my whole body. I am trembling all over. Fool, I say to myself. Fool, why are you trembling? The raid is over. You are safe. You will get an MM. 10 days leave in London or Paris. I try to decide where I shall go, to Paris or to London, but the thoughts do not stick. The image of Carl, he who died on my bayonet, seems to stand before my eyes. The shaking becomes worse. The movements are those of one who is palsied. I begin to sob. I am alone. I am living through the excitement of the raid all over again, but I cannot relieve myself with action now. I do not think things now. I feel them. Who was Carl? Why did I have to kill him? 40 men lost. Why? McLeod killed. Why? I do not want to lie here. I am frightened at being alone. I get to my feet and start up the stairs leading to the communication trench. An officer comes stumbling down the stairs. He recognizes me. He sees my frightened eyes. Here, he says. What's the matter? Where are you going? I mumble something. He offers me his flask. It is filled with rum. I take a long swig. It burns my insides. I stumble along the trench looking for my section. It is quite dark. There are no lights in the sky. No moon, no stars. I reach the front line. I recognize faces. My name is called. It is Fry. He grasps my hand and shakes it heartily. His face is serious. "You did fine, I hear," he says. "They're all talking about it. You're going to get the MM." "Where's Cleary?" I ask. "He got it," Fry replies. "Where? How?" I ask. "Right over here." He points a finger. As soon as the barrage started, they sent over a couple of heavies. A hunk of shell caved his helmet in. He's down at the MO's dugout. I dash off down the trench. I begin to cry. Tears stream down my face. It begins to rain. The drops fall on my tin helmet, making a ping-pong noise. The water splashes my face. It trickles down the gaping collar of my tunic. The trench becomes muddy, and I slip and flounder in the dark. The front is quiet. Not a sound rips through the silence. I see a lone figure looming out of the darkness. It is a company runner. I ask where the medical officer's dugout is. He directs me. I stagger on. Odor of chemicals. It is the MO's dugout. I stumble down the stairs. Wounded men are lying all over the earthen floor. The MO sees me. He is an elderly man. He smiles. What is it, son? Cleary, A Company, I stammer. Pal? I nod my head. He puts his arm on my shoulder. I'm sorry. He won't live. I stand still. I say nothing. Do you want to see him? Yes, I say at last. He takes me to a corner and points to a khaki blood-soaked bundle. It is Cleary. His head lies on a small pile of hairy sandbags. His chin rests heavily on his collarbone. His face is a yellowish green. His eyes are closed. The eyelids flutter slightly. Over his right eye and his forehead there is a gaping wound out of which thick red blood flows. Part of his jaw is ripped off. He is breathing heavily, half snoring. His face is twisted. I turn to the doctor. Is he conscious? He shakes his head. No, he's out of it. Knocked out. Bad fracture of the skull. He'll soon pass out. As we talk, Cleary gives a loud snort. His legs and arms convulse and jerk spasmodically. Then he lies still. He's dead. I explain to the MO that there are some of my papers in the tunic of the corpse. I ask permission to take them. He nods assent. I stuff the papers into my pockets and run out into the slippery trench. I walk back to the dugouts reserved for the survivors of the raiding party. I throw myself down on the blanket. I cannot sleep. I am calm now. It is quiet. I think, why was I so terrified when I thought of Carl, the prisoner's brother? Why did I stand frozen as the MO told me that Cleary was dying? Why did tears choke me as I looked at his oozing wound in his head, at his jaw which was half torn away? Why? The questions press on my brain, cry aloud for an answer. I toss and turn in my searching. It does not come. It is better, I say to myself, not to seek for answers. It is better to live like an unreasoning animal. Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. At the base, a sergeant once told me that all the soldier needed was a strong back and a weak mind. Better not to ask questions. Better not to... Well, Cleary is dead. Dead with a hole in his head, with his jaw shot away. Maybe he was better off. No more war for him. No more fatigues. No more Clark. But why did you feel as though your insides were being forced up through your throat as you saw him die? I say to myself. No answer. I had seen other men die. Hundreds, thousands, maybe. He was a clerk in an office back home. Maybe if he hadn't died here like this, he would have married a stenographer in the office in which he worked. He would have had children, and maybe he would have been run over by a taxicab. Or maybe he would have contracted a venereal disease in a Cadieux Street dive and died of paresis. Maybe. And Carl? Maybe he was a farmer or a mechanic. Who knows? He could have died in 100 ways in civilian life. What is so terrible about the death of one of those boys? About the death of one of us? I guess it is because we do not want to die. Because we hang on so pitifully to life as it slips away. Our lives are stolen, taken from us unawares. Back home, our lives were more or less our own. More or less. There are factors in which we were doing. Back home, our lives were more or less our own. More or less. There we were factors in what we were doing. But here, we are no more factors than was the stripling Isaac, whom the hoary, senile Abraham led to the sacrificial block. But it is better not to think. I pull my coat over my head. I feel warm and drowsy. At last sleep comes, mercifully.